Hey there, I'm Amy Patee. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to today's practice, which is all for the hips, all about the hips. So we're going to be warming up with a couple sun salutations to just bring the whole body online, and then we're going to take it into some gentle hip opening postures and movements that have a little bit of a therapeutic flavor to them, to just help open up, release tension through this area, really through, the hips, but also the pelvis, the low back, and down into the legs a little bit. So it's juicy, yummy. Hopefully it'll leave you feeling much more open, much more grounded, much more able to access the resources of your lower body with ease. So if you like the practice, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already to my channel so that you can keep practicing with me, and you can check the link below or the link above, one of those spots, to learn more about how we can practice together in a more in-depth way. You can check out my yoga courses that I have available. I would love to go a little deeper with you. So go ahead and roll out your mat and have an amazing practice today. All right, so we are going to start with a little bit of a flow just to get the whole body warmed up. And then we're going to go into some deeper stretches to open up our hip flexors and the deep psoas, deep core in this lower area of the body. So you can come to the front of your mat into just an easy mountain pose. And just connect into your feet here, maybe spreading your toes, and making any adjustments so that you feel like you can really feel your legs beneath you and then feel your feet on your mat and feel even possibly the flow of energy and the release of gravity from your torso, your pelvis, through the legs, down into the feet, and then into the earth. So it's just a subtle thing to sense and bring awareness to, just to help you start coming into your body, coming into this moment, and you can play with it, right? So sometimes this changes from day to day. You might find today that you need a little wider base and a wider stance beneath you to really start finding that sense of support from the earth, and that sense of support within your own legs and feet. Good. And then just gather your palms together at the front of your chest. Let your eyes be softly focused. Tune into your breath here. And if you're familiar with the Ujjayi breathing, that audible breath, go ahead and rev that up, inhaling through the nose. And exhale, just release it through an open mouth. Let's just do that twice more, feeling yourself fully arrive here for your practice today on your mat, breathing in through the nose. Sigh it out, exhale. One more time, coming into your legs, your feet, grounding and connecting to the earth. Breathe in deeply through the nose. And let it go through the exhale. Great. And then let your arms release. And as you breathe in, bend into your knees, sink back into a chair pose, letting your arms stretch out. And just sink down as deep as you can here. Feel a little bit of stretch as you reach up through the fingertips. And then breathe out, fold yourself over your thighs. And just let yourself hang here for a moment, stretching along the back of your body. Find a release through the neck. And you could even shake out your head here, or you could sway your torso a little side to side, or give those shoulders and arms a wiggle. On your next breath in, stretch out your spine, gaze forward and lengthen. So feel free to keep your knees bent here. Plug your shoulders down away from your ears and allow the front of your chest to open. Good. Exhale, just fold back forward, melt your spine, and again, the knees bend as much as you need to honor your body in this moment. Take another breath in, stretch out and lengthen. See if you can open your chest here, lift your throat, and you can squeeze a little through the upper back and into the back of your neck. And then let's exhale, step the left foot way back behind. And tap that left knee down and just say hello to those hips. We're gonna work into those hips a little bit more after we've moved through a couple sun salutations here. Take a breath in, just draw up through your heart. And this is a good place, I didn't grab my blocks today, but this is a good place to place blocks beneath your hands to give yourself a little extra lift. We'll breathe in. And then exhale, just plant your hands and stretch yourself back. Come into your downward facing dog. Good, breathing in, forward to plank pose, upward push-up. You can always drop your knees right off the bat here. All right, I'll demonstrate that. Pull the shoulders down so the neck is long, gazing slightly forward. Press your hands towards each other. Begin to bend into your elbows as you lead with your heart. Come down to your belly. Let your toes point back. And then breathe in as you curl up. So scoop those shoulders up, back, and down. Hug in through your elbows. Reach long through your legs. And as you exhale, just tap back down. So let your forehead touch down. Repeat, inhale, cobra. Gentle curling up through the spine. Exhale, touch down with your forehead. And one more time, breathing in, curling up. And then exhale, release, touch down. Good, and then just press into your hands, glide yourself up, come to your hands and knees, pull back with your hips for a moment here. Take a child's pose, stretching out long through your arms. Pull back through those hips. Release through the fronts of your ankles. And then inhale, rise back up onto your hands and knees. Tuck your toes, find your downward facing dog. Send your right leg up here and just let the hip open and bend your knee. So feeling into that right side of the body, and maybe here stretching through that right quad, the right thigh, into the hip flexor. And then breathing out, come back to your down dog. Switch sides, send your left leg up. Open that left hip, bend your knee. Take a nice deep breath in. And then we're going to swing this right foot forward. So as you exhale, step it forward. And maybe you only get your foot partially forward. Then you can reach back, grab your leg, and see if you can swing it to the front of your mat. And then tap that right knee down. And again, just lean into your hips a little bit here. And we're just opening, gently beginning to open through the hip area. So let this feel good. And again, if you're somebody who struggles with lunging, you can always give yourself more space, right? You could come up if you need to all the way, but otherwise, if you have blocks, those are really useful props. I love my blocks, and I'm sorry I didn't pull them out for this practice, but they're a really useful prop to have. So just releasing through those hips a little bit, and then let's lift up the knee and then see if you can spring forward, push off, spring forward, come back to your forward fold, and take a breath in and stretch out, lengthen. And then as you exhale, curl in, fold in. And again, just feel your back melt. And then we're going to roll up through the spine. So you can bend into your knees. Try to let your heels become really heavy on your mat. Let them sink down as you shrug your way up here. Roll the shoulders back at the top and just let yourself stand. So we're just going to do one more sun salutation, similar to that, and we're just opening slowly. Indulge in these movements, okay? So bend your knees, take a breath in, chair pose. Just for a moment here, pull way back and down with those hips, and then fold over, exhale. Let the torso be heavy. Breathe in, really elongate here. Pull out of your tailbone, out of your pelvis with your spine. Gaze forward. Bring weight towards the balls of your feet. Exhale, fold, melt in. One more time, inhale, lengthen. Good, and then this time as you exhale, we're gonna step the right leg back this time. Just switching out our sides. Tap that right knee down, lean into your hips. And then this time around, we're gonna move more here in this lunge, create some fluidity in the hip joint. So I'm gonna have you exhale, pull your hips back, and you could even peel the left toes up off your mat. And then as you inhale, rock forward. Now again, if this is a struggle with your arms on either side of your left foot. Take your left hand inside your foot and walk that left foot out a little bit to the side. And then shift yourself forward and back a couple more times. And as you shift back here, you could even, as you lift those left toes, you could draw your chin to your chest and round your spine. And then as you inhale and you come forward, you're lifting your chest and arching your spine a little bit. Do one more of those. Breathing out, pull back. And breathing in, coming forward. Good. And then tuck your back toes and lift up that right knee and stretch into your down dog. Beautiful. And from down dog, come into your plank. Inhaling. Again, drop your knees if you need to. Exhaling, lowering to the belly. Come through cobra again, breathing in. And you might stay right here with cobra, right? You could come up into a little bit of a higher, bigger cobra. Sometimes I call this king cobra. Still cobra. You can see that my hands are in front of my shoulders. My thighs are still on the mat. A little deeper stretch for the front of the body. No strain in the back though, if you're taking that deeper variation. Come on down, breathe out, and then just push into your hands, squeeze the belly up, pull back, take a long extended child's pose, reaching out through your fingertips. Breathing in, come back up to your hands and knees, tuck your toes, downward facing dog. Lift your left leg up. You can bend that left knee. Or if it feels good this time, draw some big circles with your left leg, your left knee. Keep the jaw and the face relaxed. Breathing in, and then exhale, releasing. Left foot to the floor, switch sides, right leg stretches up. Bend your knee, and you could just hold here in a static stretch if that feels really good to you. Or try circling out your right knee. Take a breath in, and then we're going to lunge this right foot forward. Remember, if you get it halfway forward, grab the leg, see if you can swing it to the front of your mat, and then lean into your lunge here. Let your hips rock forward. And if the space feels limited, take your right hand inside your right foot, walk your right foot out to the right. And even if you don't have limited space, sometimes this is just a nice version so that you can go a little deeper into your hips. And then begin to rock forward and back. So pull back with your hips. Maybe you lift up your right toes so you'll get a little hamstring stretch on that right side. And you could also round your spine here, breathing out. And then as you breathe in, coming back forward, lifting through the chest, let the shoulders slide down your back. Do that a couple more times, pulling back. Coming forward. Emphasis on your exhale, utilizing a relaxed jaw to promote release down into the pelvis and the hips. The two are deeply connected. Good, now come back through the front here into your lunge. Lift up that left knee, and now this time you might want to kind of heel toe that right foot in so you're back into your lunge, and then spring yourself forward. Take a breath, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Good, and then this time you're gonna heel toe your feet out wider than hips. Toes turn outward. Bend your knees and come down into a yogi squat. And we're gonna hang out here for a few breaths. So if you're able to, bring your palms to press and let your elbows kind of anchor into your inner knees. And your inner knees can hug back a little bit into your elbows. And then you're going to draw up through your neck. Back of the neck is long, so you're lifting through the base of your skull, and then relax at the front of your throat. Focus your eyes past the tip of your nose. And you could rock a little bit here, side to side. If it's too much to be upright, just keep your hands on the floor. Maybe, for instance, your heels don't quite touch the floor. Perfectly fine. And with squatting also, you can do a half squat if your knees are bothered by that deeper version. You can come up and rest on your thighs like this. So let's hold here for 5 more breaths. And each time you exhale, see if you can feel a release through the deep throat. The jaw is heavy. You might even breathe a little bit out through your mouth and allow your hips to let go with that exhalation. You might even feel a release deep within your belly, right? Maybe towards the back of your belly, towards the front of your lower spine. Good. Take one more nice, slow breath in. And then as you exhale, let your hands release. Straighten back out through your legs. Heel toe your feet in. Relax your torso forward. Inhale, lengthen. Good. And then exhale. This time, just step yourself all the way back into your down dog. Take a nice big breath, inhaling. And then as you exhale, let your knees come down to your mat, and then come back into just a passive, relaxed child's pose. Let your forehead rest to your mat, or you can layer up your forearms and rest your forehead on your hands or your forearms. Let's take 5 breaths here. And again, releasing through the jaw as you exhale, and maybe feeling that release travel down the front of your spine into the deep part of your belly. Maybe even letting go across your low back, and your hips might start to sink even more towards the earth, towards your heels. Take one more breath here, breathing in and out. And then inhaling, coming up onto your hands and knees, and we're going to come around to sit on our mats. And I'm going to be using a bolster to sit on. You're going to want to have either a bolster, or you could also have a firm folded blanket or a block, something that will lift your hips just a little bit for these next few stretches. So sitting on your mat, bring your feet to the floor. And you can see how my feet are a little bit wider than hip distance here. And then I'm going to drop my legs over to the right. And then you can kind of wiggle a little bit, so you can kind of tuck those legs in. So hopefully, it's always a little complicated, right? Getting ourselves into these positions sometimes. So a little bit like this. So if you start here, right, drop the legs over. I've kind of rotated, but I want to face you, so I'm just going to scooch this way a little bit. And this is kind of like windshield wiper legs, we would call this. Now, if your hips are really tight, again, sitting up on your boost is going to give you a little bit of support, hopefully help you get into this position with more ease. And the higher up you go, usually the easier it is to be here, if your hips are really tight. So I want you to take your hand to your left hip here, and we're going to do some really subtle movements. So these are more therapeutic movements versus like big, ginormous stretches that you might be used to with yoga. So we'll give it a try. So you're going to try to find the bony part of your hip here, and you're going to just scoop your hand around, and even sometimes just holding your hip. If you've got a lot of tightness, tension, or pain there, sometimes just holding it tightly, providing like a little hug to that hip can feel really nurturing, and can help those muscles start to feel like, okay, maybe I can let go a little bit. So holding that hip there. And then we're going to do some subtle cat-cow movements from the pelvis. So on your inhalation, you're going to try to you can use your hand to help. You're going to tip your hips forward, tip your pelvis forward. So my tailbone is lifting up and back, and I'm arching my spine a little bit here. Okay. And as you do this first time, I want you to go really slow, and just notice if you've started to kind of crank up the effort around that left hip, and just see if you can release and let your left leg be heavy. Breathe in. And then on your exhalation, you're going to reverse that movement. So we're going to try to tuck our tail under and pull back. And you're trying not to move your legs too much, or even too much of your spine. We're really focusing on the pelvis. And then inhale, rock forward. A little arch of your back, lifting the chest. Exhale, round your spine, rock back. So without getting too much into anatomy at this moment, I want to just tell you a little bit about the movement that we're doing here. So we've stabilized our thigh bone, and at the top of the thigh bone, there's this nice big meaty part of the bone that is attached to the pelvic bone. So when you hear the word ball and socket, right, that's the kind of joint we have going on here. So we're moving the socket, which is the hip bone, the pelvic bone, around the ball of the thigh bone, the top of the thigh bone. And again, sometimes these movements take a little bit of patience, but use your breath, maybe close your eyes, and just allow any debris, stickiness, tension deep inside the hip joint to receive this gentle movement. Relaxing your jaw and your shoulders. Good. And then take your last exhalation here. Breathe out. And then as you breathe in, come back forward. Feel that hip kind of align. It might still feel a little tight in this position, and that's okay. Take a breath in and out. Good. And then we're going to release and switch to the opposite side. So for this kind of in-between little part of the pose, just stretch both legs out for a moment and just kind of notice how things feel between these two sides. Maybe you'll feel more warmth or openness on one side. It's just something to be aware of. And then we'll come to the second side. So again, you can kind of stagger your feet, and then you're just going to drop your knees over to the left. And you could pull up a prop underneath your left hip a little bit so that you're boosted. And then take your hand, your right hand to your right hip here. And you can kind of feel how the hip wants to be held. Does it want to be squeezed deeply, massaged a little bit? Does it want to be held lightly? And then we start that simple movement. So as you breathe in, again, you're going to try to just tip the pelvis forward. So again, we're stabilizing the thigh bone, trying to keep it pretty still, and moving the pelvic bone, the socket, around the ball of the thigh bone. And then as you exhale, you rock back. And maybe you tuck your chin a little bit and feel a little rounding of your spine. And then as you inhale, you rock forward. And it's very subtle, so I'm not even sure if you can see me moving a lot, but rocking that pelvis forward and back like a cat-cow, baby cat-cow, focusing on initiating the movement from the pelvis. And just keep going with your breath, exhaling, rocking back and rounding. Inhaling, rocking forward, arching. Just take 2 or 3 more of these. Let it be like a moving meditation. Right, again, it's a subtle movement, but we're kind of delicately going in deep and clearing out debris, right, and stress. Notice if your shoulders are rising way up high. Good. And then when you're ready, come through center. See if you can find a place where it feels like your thigh bone, the ball of the thigh bone, top of the thigh bone, and then the socket from your hip bone. Right? It's like perfectly set. Take a breath in. This leg is heavy. Exhale. Good, and then you can draw that leg out, and if you have a lot going on in those hips, it might feel even like, ooh, like a little stiff coming out of that. And let your legs extend for a moment, maybe rock them in and out, and just feel the shift there in those hips. Any sensation. Good, breathe it out. All right, and then now this is where you, again, are gonna need your kind of thick folded blanket or bolster. And we're going to do more of a passive release for the hips. So if you come down onto your back and have your prop nearby, knees bent with your feet on the floor, and we're going to lift the hips and slide the bolster underneath them. Of course, now some people, this is like, you're like, how do I get this under here? So another option, if you're struggling, place the bolster or the deep folded blanket, and then you can kind of sit on the edge of it and then lie back over it. So you just kind of find your own graceful way into this position, right? So the pelvis is resting on your bolster, or it could be resting on that deep, kind of thick folded blanket. Just let your arms come out to the side. Maybe you goalpost your arms, and you want your feet to be a little bit wider than your hips. And we're going to do a similar kind of movement to what we just did with the legs. So take a breath in here. And then as you exhale, you're going to let your legs fall over to the left. And just pause for a moment and kind of check things out and see how things feel. So if this is too much for your low back in any way, shape, or form, if you're feeling any strain, or maybe it's in your hips or someplace else, try it flat on your back instead. This boost of the bolster, or whatever you're on, kind of obviously is lifting the pelvis up, so we're going to accentuate this area in the opening here. So you may not need that, so you can come off the bolster if it's too much for you. Take a breath in. Breathe it out. Good, now feel your feet and begin to lift your legs back up through center, and then exhale, take them over to the right, and just pause. Let them be heavy here. Notice if you start to pull up your shoulders off your mat, or you start to clench into that jaw. See if you can let the upper spine be heavy. And again, maybe releasing out through an open mouth, so exhaling through the open mouth slowly, and see if you can follow the release of the exhale down the front of your spine, connecting into the low back and maybe even into the center of your pelvis, releasing there. Good. Lift your knees back up through center, inhaling, and then begin to go a little bit side to side here. And you can make this really passive, like you're just loosely letting the legs drop from side to side, or it can be more dynamic. So when your legs come to one side, maybe you kind of stretch them down. See what feels right for you and for your spine. Let's do a couple more of those. We'll do just a couple more of these. And then allow your knees to come back up through center here. And I'm going to give a couple options. So you can have your feet wide apart, maybe even mat width apart, and then you're just going to let your knees fall in towards each other. Kind of checking to see if they actually touch or rest into one another or not. And it doesn't really matter as long as there's no discomfort or pain. But the intention here is to let your thigh bones just get heavier and heavier, possibly leaning into one another. So you can try that on and see if that feels good to you. Or you could walk your feet towards each other, and you're going to press the soles of your feet together and let your knees fall out to the side. So what most of us view as Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining bound angle. So you can see how this one feels. Try it on, see if it feels good, and just choose the one that feels the best to your body in this moment. They're both very therapeutic and release in different ways, release the hips in different ways. And then we'll take just 5 slow, deep breaths here and breathe in, feeling the belly expanding, feeling the front of your pelvis expanding. And when you exhale, maybe you even release the jaw again and breathe out and just feel that release moving all the way down the front of your spine, through the belly, through the pelvis. Repeat that a few more times. Sometimes as we release in this way, you can even feel little waves of emotions kind of move through you. And that's just an indicator that the energy is flowing, things are opening, and those emotions have been blocked up in this area of the body. And the pelvis and the hips are known for carrying the emotions, and we want those to be able to flow. So take your last breath in, feel the belly again opening, expanding, maybe the front of the pelvis opening. Nice release down the front of your spine, deep into the pelvis. And then from here, if you happen to have your knees in the open position, sometimes it's nice to take your hands, if they reach to your outer thighs, and just give a little support, and then lift one leg at a time, pressing into the outside edge of your foot to help lift the leg up, then the other leg up. And then just pull your knees in towards your chest. Give yourself a little hug here and a little rock from side to side. And this is kind of nice because you'll just be massaging into the low back and into the back of your pelvis a little bit. You could hold your knees here and draw some loose circles with your knees. And then you can explore stretching your legs straight up and maybe just giving the legs like a little shake. Kind of shaking your thighs, letting the muscles find even more release. Letting the muscles maybe release their grip a little bit on the bones, and letting the bones just kind of find their way into fluid alignment here. All right, good. And then bend your knees again, and might be easiest from this position now to just roll off to your side. So with your knees kind of into your chest, see if you can just, in a really leisurely, relaxed, casual way, just roll to the side. Ease your body up. Take it nice and slow. We're going to move our prop out of the way, and we're just going to do one more stretch to support those hips and that psoas area in the body. So I'm going to have you come over onto your hands and knees. Take a stretch back through child's, and maybe the knees are kind of wide here, and just let the body rest for a moment. A couple breaths. Your hips might feel a little bit more open in this position. Maybe feels like your pelvis is stretching back and down a bit more. One more breath here. Breathe into your belly. And breathe it out. All right, and then go ahead and rise up onto your hands and knees. And we're going to move through some cat-cow to finish up our sequence today. So from here, hands right underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. As you breathe in, you're going to arch your spine. And you can think back to when you had your hand resting on your hip joint and you were facilitating this movement, right? And as you breathe out, you're going to round your spine. You probably have a lot more range in this particular position. Breathing in, arching. Right, but sometimes even just imagining that your hands are still there, one on both of your hips, you might feel just a different kind of flavor to this movement, different than how you normally feel it. Imagine your hands, if they were there, they're guiding you through this movement in a really integrated, aligned, balanced way. Good, and then now see if you can begin to deviate a little bit from this movement, drawing some big circles. And you could think of drawing them from your hips themselves, or your tailbone, or your low back even, right? And there's no perfect way to do this. It's just a fluid, yummy movement, circling around, helping the muscles, the bones, everything articulate in creative ways, in ways that can help things release and open. And you want to go in both directions, or maybe you're like a snake and you're just kind of flowing around. And if your elbows or your wrist are bothered in this position, just drop to your forearms. Keep moving. Take one or two more circles. Good, and then let yourself come back through center, and then sit back onto your heels if you're able to. All right, give your wrist a little stretch if you need it. And now we're gonna come on down for our final resting pose, Shavasana. And so if you still have your blanket or bolster nearby, I'm gonna offer this as our Shavasana position today. A little bit of a restorative chest opener. So your bolster or your blanket can kind of wedge up to your low back here. And then you're just gonna recline over. And you wanna make sure that your head is fully supported here. So you can always scoot your blanket up to make sure it holds your head. And then your legs are going to stretch out straight, and you can have your legs about hip distance apart and just let your toes flap open away from each other. Take your arms out to the side, turn the palms face up towards the sky, and then just close your eyes. And we're going to work with that deep belly breathing again here. And so as you breathe in, just feel your belly expand, your navel reaching away from your spine. And then as you exhale, feeling heaviness through the hips, the pelvis, and your spine sinking down into whatever is beneath it. Breathing in, feeling an opening across the front of your hips and pelvis. Breathing out, maybe through the mouth gently, releasing along the front of your spine all the way down towards the tip of your tailbone. Let your legs be heavy, your feet are heavy, your arms are heavy. And take about 5 more of these breaths. Slow, slow, slow. And it can be really lovely to stay in this restorative position for as long as you'd like, really. But giving yourself an extra 5 or 10 minutes could be really enjoyable for you and relaxing for you. But if you've got things to do, if you have to move on the rest of your day, start to stretch your toes and your fingers, stretch your body. And then just let yourself slide to one side off your bolster and gently rising up to sit. Maybe you sit up here on your bolster for a little extra support. Feel into those hips a little bit. Hopefully they feel a little bit more open. There's maybe a little bit more sense of space down here in the lower body. Sometimes you can even, it's like your energy has spread out a little bit and you're more here, right? You're more grounded. So let's just gather the palms together, dropping your chin gently, bowing first and foremost to yourself, your own heart, bowing to this moment, bowing to the world. Full breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.